Hello and welcome to ITV News, the headlines on Channel this evening.
Enough is enough.
Gorst resign! Gorst resign!
Hundreds of islanders chant for the Chief Minister to step down as anger spills over at a protest march against Jersey's controversial International Finance Centre.
The government is doing things in an underhand, dirty, lying way.
Also on the programme, drive...
First tonight, Jersey's Chief Minister is facing calls to resign over the International Finance Centre. Chants of Gorst resign rang around the Royal Square yesterday as more than 1,000 islanders joined a protest against the development. 6 buildings are planned where the Esplanade car park now sits, with construction of one already underway.
The state-owned company running the project say it'll create the Canary Wharf of Jersey. But hundreds of islanders are angry, saying they aren't being listened to and taxpayers' money is at risk. Louisa Pilbeam has our top story.
Gorst resign! Gorst resign! Gorst resign!
Calls for Gorst to go. Hundreds of angry islanders saying the Chief Minister isn't listening to their concerns about the International Finance Centre.
Well, of course it's disappointing that people are asking for me to resign, but as I say, we are putting into effect previous decisions of the states to set up the waterfront or the development company to deliver the finance centre, and we know that Building 4 has started, and therefore we are following what the states has asked us to do.
Enough is enough! Enough is enough!
Yesterday they turned out on a cold November day in their droves, saying the development's risking taxpayers' money.
I'm totally against the finance centre being financed by public money, and I'm also totally against it being built where it's being built.
The government is doing things in an underhand, dirty, lying way.
There's mist and fog surrounding the whole thing. It actually stinks pretty badly.
We've got to send them a message. We've got to say to them, based on the 7th of June and based on today, if you don't listen, we will force you to listen.
That was the message from the organiser of the march, former politician Sean Power.
Taxpayers' money is being spent on a risk. That risk is developing office buildings and, to another extent, high-end, high-rise, high-value apartments, which is not in the best interests of this island.
But the protest was about more than just this. The finance hub on the waterfront, with the first of 6 buildings already being constructed. These islanders are unhappy about rising taxes, GST, and claims pensioners and the poor are being penalised.
Well, we're all unhappy the way the government is running at the moment. They seem to be almost like a plutocracy, a government run by the rich for the rich, and not a democracy.
They say the finance centre sums up that lack of democracy, and they're prepared to go to court to stop the states building it.
We have been approached, I have specifically been approached by a member of a senior member of the legal profession who says that we should take this further, and he's implying that we should take it to Queen and Counsel. So we'll see whether we can, whether we should, and whether they're listening.
Whether politicians hear this message is uncertain, but these islanders say the voting public will speak come election time, and politicians will have to listen. Louisa Pilbeam, ITV News, St Helier.
Well, joining us in the studio now is Jersey's Treasury Minister, Senator Alan McLean. And Senator, a huge turnout there at that protest. Will you listen and halt the building of this finance centre?
Well, Jess, we're not going to be halting the building. No, it started on building number 4, the first one. To even consider to stop it would cost in the region of £15 to £20 million in terms of broken contracts and so on. So that's not practical. And let's be frank, where we've got to with this is it's been through a considerable process. Setting up with the SOJDC was a state's decision. All that I'm doing and all that we're doing is following through on the instructions the states gave to maximise the value of states' assets. That's the assets owned by the public of Jersey.
You say a big consultation, but do you feel enough people have been consulted? A lot of angry people there in St Helier at the weekend. Does that strength of feeling worry you?
Well, I think there's been a certain amount of misinformation, unfortunately, which hasn't helped with this particular debate. I noticed in the comments in your earlier piece there was talk about risking taxpayers' money. Actually, that's not the case at all. SOJDC was set up. It has assets of about £54 million. It pays a dividend. Last year it was £816,000, this year £1 million. That goes to Treasury for the benefit of islanders. Obviously, it can be used in that way. And the building itself is being constructed using a bank loan. Now that's secured on the site itself. So there's no taxpayers' money being used to construct the building, so the risk is mitigated.
You talk about, but there is speculation here, isn't it? It's speculative in the sense that you're not going to build the buildings unless you have the tenants in place in order to build them. And who knows how long that's going to take?
Well, that's exactly the point, you see. It isn't speculation. The fact that the states put in place a condition that there had to be pre-let, so there had to be a legally binding agreement to cover the cost of construction of each building, and it's only being done on a building-by-building basis.
You may never get the tenants. There's no guarantee that you'll get the tenants, is there?
We can't start building until you've got a tenant in a legally binding agreement, and that's what's happened with building number 4, the first one that's just started.
I understand, but my point is that you can't start building unless you have the tenants, and there's no guarantee you'll get the tenants. So this land could just remain empty or turned over to flats, and that's not ideal, is it?
I think that's unlikely. First of all, we are now seeing the first building is already starting. There is a tenant who signed up on a legally binding agreement, and there's been independent valuations, 3 of them, demonstrating that the building, when complete, is going to be worth significantly more than the cost of constructing it. That's very positive, and it's positive for our finance industry, for jobs. Nearly 13,000 people in Jersey, mostly islanders, are employed by financial services.
Sorry, there are still 5 more buildings to fill, and looking at other private developments, they're not getting the tenants. So are you not really worried about these buildings not being built on the basis of there being no tenants?
Well, let's be clear about this. The whole purpose of mitigating risk, ensuring that there's pre-lets in place, and doing it on a phased basis, so that's one building at a time, means that there's plenty of time. This is a 10 to 12-year project. It's going to take a period of time, and it'll continually be updated. The viability for each building happens well in advance. So where we are at the moment is exactly where we should be, and it's going to be good for Jersey. I have absolutely no doubt about that.
OK, we shall see. Minister, for now, thank you.